It's been 1 month with the Pixel 7a, Google's latest mid-range phone that is trying really hard to be something of a value king, as it comes in with a reasonable starting price of $499, yet is kind of loaded with a cabinet full of flagship features. It's been great seeing the evolution of Pixel 8 devices transitioning from once unapologetic budget phones with clear concessions to now being more flagship-esque while still at a more accessible price point. And in many ways, the Pixel 7a is the best embodiment of this transformation, as it's a pretty close clone to the flagship Pixel 7 that launched about a year ago. But as to be expected, this phone does come with some drawbacks that doesn't make it a no-brainer buy yet. So today I want to talk about how my experience has been 1 month later with the Pixel 7a. I'm going to go into the specifics about what I've enjoyed the most with this phone over that time, as well as things that haven't been the best. Okay, let's start with the pros of the Pixel 7a, and by far the best thing about this phone, especially given its price point, has got to be its camera quality. Google equipped this device with new camera hardware, primarily the new 64 megapixel main sensor, a new 13 megapixel ultra wide, and an updated 13 megapixel selfie camera as well. On paper, this spec bump is nice when compared to what the Pixel 6a brought to the table, but there were a lot of initial question marks on how this new hardware would perform, given the super high bar the Pixel has when it comes to image quality. And 1 month later, I'm happy to report that when it comes to still image photography, the 7a delivers what many have come to expect from a phone bearing the Pixel name. The pictures coming out of this phone are sharp with a healthy dose of color saturation for a flattering look. There's also a good amount of contrast that's added in the recipe for a slightly moodier vibe, ultimately giving users the very popular stylized look that Google phones are kind of known for. Despite the sensors being slightly smaller, the image quality is near identical to what's coming out of the flagship Pixel 7, so kudos to Google for properly imbuing the new hardware with its computational photography magic. There's also a solid color match between the main sensor and the ultra-wide, which is great. Low light photography also performs really well. Google continues to be a leader with its night sight abilities, and again, it's very similar to what's coming out of the more expensive Pixels. And dude, shout out to the selfie camera, it performs really well. The selfies are sharp and flattering, and portrait mode shots are pretty impressive. Now, what doesn't work so well with the cameras is the shutter lag. It's pretty slow. This can make it difficult to capture fast-moving objects for action, and generally speaking, there's still a pretty noticeable lag from when the shutter's pressed to when the image completes its processing. No doubt the image processing is one of the more calorie-intensive activities for the Pixel 7a, as you can see the transformation is quite significant. All to say though, these are still some of the best still images coming out of any phone right now, which is really impressive given that this phone costs around half the price of the other devices on the list. And it's definitely one, if not the most compelling reason to go with the Pixel 7a. Now, I've said this before and I have to say it again, the amazing still image quality that's coming out of this phone is not what you should expect when it comes to video quality. The 4K footage is just okay at best. It's passable in good lighting and performs the best when there's a clear subject in the center of the frame. The wider you go, however, the noisier and less sharp the footage becomes, and this is definitely an area of the Pixel 7a that starts to show its mid-tier price. And 1 month later, this is more of a bummer than I thought it would be. People take and share way more video than they did before, and what's probably driving more of my disappointment in this area is the fact that I use an iPhone as my primary device, and the video quality on that phone is just so much better. But let's get back into talking about what I've enjoyed about the Pixel 7a 1 month later, and let's talk about the phone's display. Generally speaking, it's pretty vanilla on a spec sheet, but I do appreciate that this is an OLED panel with a full HD resolution. Content comes off crispy with fantastic contrast, and the edge-to-edge design provides for a solid viewing experience. But the thing about the Pixel 7a's display that I've appreciated the most is not the resolution, but its refresh rate. This is the first Pixel 8 device that comes with a 90Hz variable refresh rate, which makes navigating around the phone's UI noticeably smoother and more enjoyable. And because it's something you'll experience basically with every interaction, it's a much more appreciated upgrade than you would think. This one update alone is enough for me to recommend this over last year's Pixel 6a, even if you can find that phone for pretty cheap, which you really can. The high refresh rate elevates the user experience in a way that, to me, justifies their higher cost, and I feel this addition significantly adds to the Pixel 7a's value proposition. Now, the display, as great as it is, it's definitely not perfect, and 1 month later, there are some parts about it that I really haven't enjoyed. First, it's got some pretty chunky bezels despite its edge-to-edge design that I'm really not a fan of. To be fair, you really don't notice them when you're actually using the device, so it's not the biggest deal, but it definitely is a component to this phone that makes it look kind of cheap. The other thing about this display that hasn't been the best is its brightness level. It just doesn't get as bright as I want it to be. It's not going to be something you notice or really care about when you're indoors, but man, this display struggles when it's outside or in bright lit areas. It's noticeably dim, and again, this is one of those things that really makes the Pixel 7a look its price. But another thing that I really enjoyed and appreciated about this phone 1 month later has been its overall design and form factor. It's probably my favorite Pixel 8 device in that regard. Google did such a good job of making this as close to the design of the more premium flagship Pixel lineup, to the point where it's gonna take a trained eye to distinguish this and the Pixel 7. Now yes, you do have the back panel here that's made out of plastic. Trust me when I say it sounds a lot worse than it actually is, mainly because it looks pretty close to how the regular Pixels are with their glass build, and the quote-unquote cheap feeling is mitigated really well with the alloy frame that Google wisely included. And the components of the Pixel 7a are really well put together. You get some super clicky buttons, which are great, an in-display fingerprint reader that keeps the phone looking really clean, and of course the signature Pixel camera ledge that gives the 7a a modern look. And surprisingly, despite this being the smallest when it comes to dimensions in comparison to the Pixel 7s, this has turned out to be one of my favorite features of the design. This phone is so much more comfortable to use than my Pixel 7 Pro. It's way easier to operate and navigate with one hand, and you still get a rather generous 6.1-inch display with this setup, so consuming content is still immersive and very enjoyable. It to me really is the sweet spot when it comes to both comfort and overall utility. Now there are some other aspects about the Pixel 7a that I've really enjoyed over the past month, like having access to some really great software features. Of course, having stock Android is great, and because this phone is equipped with the same Tensor G2 chip as their flagship counterparts, the 7a has access to the same power-intensive features like Google dictation apps, photo editing tools like Magic Eraser and Photo and Blur, and probably my favorite addition to this phone, Face Unlock. So from a user standpoint, there's no real performance difference between this and something like my Pixel 7 Pro, and you're privy to all of the great apps and features that Google is known for. Now the one area of performance that hasn't been the best is battery life, but to be fair, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It comes with a pretty mid 4,385 mAh battery, and no lie, I was a bit concerned as Google ships the Pixel 7a with the 90Hz refresh rate off by default, usually a sign that turning it on will deplete the battery a lot faster. And look, bottom line, this phone isn't the best when it comes to overall battery life. I could usually get through a full day before bottoming out with moderate use, but I did notice that the battery does drain a lot when shooting video with this phone, or if you're using it for something like Google Maps on a sunny day. Now I'll try to leave this on a positive note though by saying that the addition of wireless charging finally making it to a Pixel 8 device has been great. It is mad slow wireless charging though, so it's not the best if you need a fast fill up. But let's get into the last thing about the Pixel 7a that's been both good and bad, which I know sounds a bit weird, but I think you'll get it because here of course we're talking about the price. On its own, I think $499 for a phone as feature packed as this one is pretty fair. Minus a few concessions, this is as close as you can get to a mirrored flagship. Now the issue is this, the main competition for the Pixel 7a is ironically the other Google Pixels. For only $100 more, you can get a brand new Pixel 7, which is made out of more premium materials, has a larger and less bezel heavy display, and an overall better fit and finish. And it's not uncommon for this phone to go on sale. Back when I picked up the Pixel 7a myself, the Pixel 7 was on sale for $499, which made it a no-brainer for the 7. And behind that, last year's Pixel 6a is at a very budget-friendly $349 right now, and is still an ultra-capable phone for those looking to get max value for dollar. Now, I personally think 1 month later, going with the 7a over the 6a is worth it despite the attractive low price of the latter, mainly because you get the 90Hz refresh rate and the Tensor G2 chip on the 7a. Those upgrades to me are significant enough to shell out the extra dollars. But dude, it's still a hard sell against the Pixel 7, even though I get that the 7a is so similar and probably better value, I'll likely still spend the extra $100 for the slightly better device. But hey, that's just me, and I want to know what you guys think. What do you guys think about the Pixel 7a? Would you go with this phone and save $100? Or would you spend the extra 100 and go for the 7? Curious to get your thoughts. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. And in case you guys want to compare this phone to the Google Pixel 6a and the 7 Pro, check out these videos here. They're going to help you be as informed as possible.